Hey everybody, this is MetalMusicMan.
And I am Professor Lex.
And we are podcasting remotely while we stare at each other's faces pixelated on Discord.
It's important to me that we maintain intense eye contact through all of these podcasts.
Well, I'm really bad at it.
Smoldering eye contact. Well, it's fine. You don't actually have
There's
to do
something about like the webcam, which is where I'm supposed to look, but then where your face is, and then I'm also distracted by my face and how hot or not hot and ugly I am, depending on any particular lighting. And you're just constantly going back. It's really never. This is actually all far worse than in person, although at least at least it works and you're not dying of COVID. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, as long as we don't get COVID, I think we made it on the other side of this quarantine
that's
and podcast. Okay. I was gonna say I've got this like little thumbnail sized picture of me, so I can't assess my relative level of hotness.
See, that's the problem. There's a little button you got to click so you can see your own face and check.
Oh
it out.
No! See, I could do that, but then it's just my face. I don't see you, and it's as we have said, it's all about that smoldering eye
double
contact
thing. Yeah, maybe I should. I don't even know how to go back to that. Turn on screen share. That's not a thing. Well, that doesn't. Would I hit this? No,
that'll do a different thing.
I don't know how any of this goes back to how it was, but the point is, none of you are going to see this video, even though we can see this video, because I'm growing a shitty quarantine quote unquote beard. They can't see our.
I'm doing the. You can. I've got a trick knuckle, so you can sort of
hear air quotes. I've got one too, actually. Yeah. Cool. These are our bones cracking. This is the best ASMR.
Old. We made it. Yeah.
ASMR ever. So anyway, I'm growing a shitty quarantine beard, quote unquote, which is not even. You can barely even tell it's there, and no one can see it.
Could see it. I could see it on your face before you said anything. I was gonna comment about your quarantine beard.
I'm sad that it's even visible because it's like barely. God, it's.
Were you hoping it could be just like completely wiped out by the lights and stuff?
I would like to hit a switch. Okay. Like 3 months down the road and be like, here's my shitty quarantine beard. But in the interim, just have no shitty beard. But I can't do that.
No.
So yeah, speaking of beards and things that old people have, you're basically an old person and you're at risk of dying to COVID.
Yeah, I've got the asthma. So
the asthma.
If I get it, it would be hard. I hear. I haven't had.
You would maybe cough and die.
COVID. Yeah. It was about normal.
That's good. So yeah, we were gonna go in with some table talk. Table talk.
Yes.
Tabletop talk. It
is table talk, but if people didn't know what we were talking about, this is table talk is when you're talking about tabletop RPGs.
Talk to me more about those tables.
I would love to talk to you about the tables.
So yeah, we did a thing last night, which is why this is fresh on our minds. And it was butts in the dark, blades in the dark,
blades in the dark, not butts in the dark.
Well, yeah, one can only hope.
Keep my fingers crossed for you.
Yeah. It was pretty neat. We had talked about it after we finished it up, and I think this will be a good comparison to like Dungeons and Dragons, because for me, like we've talked about after the session, I did enjoy it, but I didn't ever get to a point where I thought, hey, I would rather play this than Dungeons and Dragons,
Sure.
And I've played, what have I played? I've played Shadowrun.
That sounds real. I think it's Shadowrun.
And then I've also done a couple, like, I don't even know what they're called, but I guess they're more adventure, less RPG tabletop style games, that have been vaguely Lovecraftian. So,
wait, was it Call of Cthulhu or Trail of Cthulhu?
You have Insanity. You go insane.
It is probably Call of Cthulhu, but Trail of Cthulhu is based on Call of Cthulhu, and I'm a huge fan of Trail of Cthulhu. I'm so glad that you brought it up.
I think there was a priest and a little girl, and you go insane if you do certain things.
Yep. Okay. Just very much like Lovecraft. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, point being, I've played a handful of D&D-esque, tabletop-esque type things.
Tabletop RPGs.
Yeah. And, I've enjoyed most of them, but I have not enjoyed any of them as much as I've enjoyed D&D proper.
Okay. For me, D&D serves this great purpose where it's got this huge, thick, established history, but also it's got its roots in, I don't know, I told you this before, it's like a hodgepodge of a handful of different ideas, but it's based on a game called Chainmail. Way back a million years ago, and all of the high fantasy stuff that they put in is just sort of flavor to express the chainmail, which is just a battle simulator.
Oh, why do you know everything about all things?
I can't tell you that. That's a topic for another time.
Okay. So there was originally a battle simulator, and that's how D&D got made,
right,
I guess?
Right. Yeah, Gygax and his other friends in a basement all got together, and there's a lot more drama in there than I can go over and am knowledgeable about. But they said, oh, let's take this thing that works kind of well and let's make a Dungeons and Dragons out of it. And, D&D's cool because it's got everybody knows the lore. Everyone has an idea of what a wizard looks like based on Dungeons and Dragons. We've all seen the Community episode where they play Dungeons and Dragons. And it's a fun time.
I actually haven't.
But
I haven't even seen that show.
I recommend Community. It's
I've heard
funny.
Good things about it.
Yeah. I really like Donald Glover.
Oh, who doesn't?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I appreciate the opportunity that it has in there for storytelling because this has gotten a lot further away from chainmail, which is where it started off, right?
This meaning Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons, like 5th edition or even like 3.5 or whatever. It's so much removed from being just a battle simulator. But I feel when I'm playing it that I owe it to myself and to the game to adhere to those rules because so many of like the spell descriptions and stuff have like 30 feet range per level, and you've got your move actions and your standard actions. And to an extent,
you're afraid to homebrew.
I'm not afraid to homebrew. When you homebrew or when you do anything, you still kind of have to adhere to that philosophy, or at least I feel like I'm supposed to.
Yeah, I kind of sensed that a little bit with when we were playing Butts in the Dark, and you were like, oh, well, there's a freedom in this. And that immediately did not make sense to me, to be perfectly honest with you. I understood it as you said it, but my immediate thought was like, well, you can already do whatever the hell you want in Dungeons and Dragons. And this is something that when I first played, so I actually, as big of a nerd as I am, and as much as I have played the Infinity Engine games, which are, it's like Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, all those games. They're all made on an engine called the Infinity Engine, and that engine is based off of more or less D&D 3.5, with some adjustments to make them playable as computer games. I've played all those games my whole life, but I never played tabletop until a year and a half ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was always something I was like aware of, but I just didn't. I didn't know anyone who was into it.
Yeah, and that's really a struggle.
Well, that's a struggle, and then this is also we can later on. I'll tag this onto. This is one of the great struggles of my existence is where like people are like, "Hey, Will, you're a loud, annoying, obnoxious piece of shit." That people can rally around because humans are fickle and are unable to make their own decisions or decide what they want to do. So we will have you do this thing and be annoying so that everyone has a common point to rally around. And then I'm like, all right, fine, I'll be annoying and do stuff. And then everyone eventually is like, well, hey, wait a minute, we want to blah, blah, blah. And they like kind of bitch about it. And it's like the lament of like being the leader or the focal point or the glue of the group, so to speak. But then also like everyone basically bitching about what's going on.
You're the foil. In creative writing, we call that a foil character.
Okay.
But that's your existence as a foil.
Yeah,
you will.
Yeah, pretty much. And I relate that to, I don't want to go too far down this path, but I relate that a lot to like tanking in like World of Warcraft.
Okay.
Where it's like, hey, the tank is the guy that decides where we're going to go in the dungeon and what we're going to do. And then you're like, all right, fine. Who wants to tank? And like, I really never wanted to be a tank specifically. It wasn't like something I sought out, but then I ended up falling into it because no one else wanted to do it. And everyone was like terrified of doing it because they can't like bear that weight. Right.
It's a lot of burden.
So then I'm like, all right, fine. I'll bear the weight, whatever. I don't give a fuck. I'm a lightning rod for everyone's emotional issues or whatever the fuck. I'll just fucking spearhead it in and go. But then you start doing it and then you're like, hey, this is pretty fun. I enjoy it. And then everyone's like, oh, well, you just always have to be the tank, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. Did everyone forget how we got here? Like, so anyway, I feel very similarly about tabletop in that regard. And I think that's why I never got into tabletop because most of the time when I was looking at early on, like years past, and I would think vaguely on a random day, Dungeons and Dragons might be neat. What's that about? Right?
Yeah.
I would think about it. And then I would always be, and this is where we get back to themes of my existence. I would always be looking for some person to like do it or know it. And never, but that person didn't exist.
That never showed up.
My friend circles,
didn't know each other.
It was always just me. Yeah, it was always just me. Yeah, and so like you're one of few people that I know that like has already got like a foothold in it.
A background, yeah.
And yeah, so for whatever reason, I guess, the kind of people I attract being the obnoxious douchebag that I am, like I guess everyone around me was not the kind of person who would have already had their own group for the most part in my life. Okay. Or if they were, it was like I didn't know them well enough to like, you know what I mean? So it was always kind of awkward to get in.
To be at the table.
So anyway, I am working my way back to our original point of customization.
We're still on tabletop.
Yeah. Of customization. So when I finally did Dungeons and Dragons, like I think again it was probably a year and a half ago, maybe it's 2 years ago now, I don't remember, but it's been since I'm in my current apartment.
I believe it was at Moonbase, since Moonbase was active and alive and a thing, because I remember having a conversation with you at a tournament about your first experience.
Yeah, so a year-ish, maybe a year and a half, something like that. And I ended up really liking it because I think one of the first things I did when I started diving into the rules is look at basically what all the gist of how things operated was. And I was like, okay, so you have your creature level, and that relates to your party level, and that's how I know how many monsters I'm going to pick. Once I kind of understood that,
if I can real quick, is this you plotting as a DM?
Yeah, excuse me, I was a DM. Yeah.
Okay.
And the DM is, well, I mean, I could correlate DMing and tanking to be the same kind of thing, and I do end up.
I was making sure that was the whole straight line.
Yeah. We're going into the Dungeon Master. So I started DMing because basically no one else.
That's exactly why everyone does it.
Yeah, exactly. And no one else would do it. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I'll go look this shit up because no one else is doing it and figure it out. So what I ended up getting into and realizing is, and why I did have that reaction to your response about it being more customizable in Butts in the Dark, is I looked at a lot of shit in D&D, and even as like a total noob, I was immediately just like, okay, these are things that clearly I should adhere to because they are hard rules that will help things flow and make sense. And then these are things over here that I can just kind of like change and do whatever the fuck I want with. And that will make things, in my opinion, as the DM, like more exciting. And I immediately got like weird flack from my brother, who's kind of a douche about things anyway, at times. But but also I have run into this with other people before, where they're like, and this is kind of to your initial point about how you feel like you have to adhere to it. I have played in groups where other people DM, and I don't mind a DM making a call, but a lot of times they will make a call from this standpoint of like, this is the only way this could ever be interpreted. No, this is how it has to be. And it's like, there are things that I think are very cut and dry like that, but then there are other things that really are pretty loose. And and whatever the DM decides is fine by me. But I guess what I'm getting to is I don't agree that everything needs to be like, you can read everything as written, raw, as they call it.
Yeah.
Some things will come across and you just be like, raw, here's what this means, you're good to go. Other things you try and do raw, and they're just so like open that it really doesn't matter. Or maybe they are close-ended, but changing them doesn't affect the gameplay that much. And so if you can alter it to make it more fun for your party, I think that's a more fun experience.
Yeah. Okay. So on that specific note, I find that is one of the benefits of Powered by the Apocalypse Engine games, which is what Blades in the Dark is. It's there's a game called Apocalypse World, and everything's a mod of Apocalypse World now. So they call it fiction first because the idea is that like they have core tenets that the dungeon master, keeper, whatever is supposed to adhere to. And one of those is that you have to be a fan of the players and that you're supposed to engineer exciting situations. And I feel like those should be tenets in every game, including, but not limited to, D&D.
I agree 100%. I actually did that exact kind of thing when I did my first group. This is exactly why I wanted to bring this up to you, because I was curious how you would feel about that, because there was a lot of stuff I did the first time I DM'd. Chiefly, I basically ruled like melee crits as, or not even melee, attack roll crits. So anything that was even like spell attack rolls, basically anything where you rolled. I ruled crits like way more in the player favor than they were at base D&D. And that was because I felt like after we had done some testing and after the groups I had played in, one of my biggest problems with D&D is that your character always feels like a helpless moron. all the time, like stupid shit that people will just rule. And this is where your point about being a fan of the players comes into play. Because I think most DMs aren't. Most DMs are they feel like they're trying to quote win or something, and it's like that's not your fucking job, bro. Your job is to make,
win.
Yeah.
If you beat everybody, you don't win. That's not how you win a dungeon. It's regardless of who you are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's like your job is to make everybody have a good fucking time and make it feel challenging, but not impossible and have fun. Yeah, you want it to be as close to like they might die, I guess, as it can be if you're trying to get Yeah, exactly. You want to build that up, but like, no, your job at the end of the day is for them to like feel good and want to play the game. And so what drove me nuts about, and this is where we get to the whole thing where people ask you to do a thing and make you be the person that spearheads it, and then they fucking bitch about shit, is like my brother started bitching at me about his fucking wizard in this fucking early session that we were doing. Cause he's like, well, you're ruling like the rogue and the barbarian and the archer. Every time they get a crit, they do like some big AoE effect and it damages everything. And I'm like, yeah, in my opinion, as the dungeon master of this game, and I think you would be hard-pressed to find people disagreeing with this at all, spells are just better than not spell characters in D&D for the most part.
In 3.5 and all of the earlier editions...
This is all 5e, for clarity.
Yeah, so in 3.5 and earlier, they had an expression that was linear fighter quadratic mage, which is to say that the fighter's progression over time is expressed in a linear fashion, and the mage has a quadratic, which is to say like
that's casters
growth.
And non-casters in most games, yeah.
I feel like, have you played 3.5 or just 5e?
I have only played games that are based off of 3.5. I have not played 3.5 tabletop.
Okay. They've done a lot to make fighters a lot better, as long as you're adhering to the concept, the core of like movement concepts, like especially in 4th edition, they had a lot of rules and like techniques and moves for fighters so that they would be able to contend with wizards.
Man, I don't feel like they got there in 5. I really don't.
Go play 3.5 and you'll have a completely different understanding.
Well, maybe,
it was like ugly.
But I'm just sure. I'm sure it's better. I don't doubt that it's better. Yeah. But it is still like to the point where like, if you're playing, I don't know, a paladin or a barbarian, you're going to be better for the first, 7 levels, maybe, like easily because of that linear progression that you're talking about. But there's always a point, and I feel like it's around level 10, where the casters are just like, well, I can just do all this shit. God. Yeah, and like there's shit. Okay, for instance, and this is like what used to drive me nuts when my brother would fucking bitch about these campaigns that we ran, because he would complain about the barbarian doing like, because I was ruling basically crits, basically every crit was like a fucking AoE cleave ability, basically. Like it was like, oh, you fucking crit, good for you, you get to do a bunch of shit. Because most of the AoE moves they have are underpowered. And I was also changing the battles, I was upping the battles to have like more stuff too. So it wasn't like, they weren't just, what do you call it, murder hoboing everything with ease. There were like definitely some tough battles that we went through, there were things. But like the whole time, my fucking brother's bitching about this shit, and he's like, "Oh, the barbarian just does this. He's doing like a fireball." I'm like, first of all, your fireball is like 10d6 or some shit. I don't even know.
Horrible.
Like he's not doing that. He's doing like an extra 2d6 to like every mob in a 10-yard radius. That is not remotely the same thing as a fucking fireball.
That's the difference if you're doing the math at home of 6 damage versus 30 damage. But go on.
B. We had multiple encounters where like, I was like, all right, this is going to be this super duper hard encounter because this guy's got this ability. He's going to fuck up all the like melee in some way. And the casters are going to have to like run. Like it's going to, okay, great. And then my brother would just be like, I turn it into a mouse. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, and then like, and it was shit that were like, there was no interpretation that you could flub to make it not, because basically it would be like monsters that, I think we were like level probably 5 or 6 or some shit. And it was like the monsters didn't have legendary resistance at that level. Yeah.
And they didn't have enough hit dice or whatever to resist the spell.
Yeah. Or, well, it wasn't, I forget which one he did. It wasn't a mouse. It was, because that would be what you're talking about. It was,
oh, okay.
He levitated it. We had a fucking, a gibbering jabber.
Nope, I can't help you with this.
Some kind of
jabberwock.
No, it's like a pile of goop with a bunch of eyes and mouths on it.
Nope,
it's like gibbering mauler, something. Anyway, I'm okay.
Jabberjaw, the
I'm
shark.
gonna look this up. 5e gibbering mouther. There it is.
Oh, a gibbering mouther. Why didn't you just say a gibbering mouther?
Well, I mean, I was pretty close. So we had like a gibbering mouther at some lower level where the gibbering mouther was a suitable end boss for that session. So it was like a relatively low level. And it's like I think it's a medium-sized creature, right? And then you look at the gibbering mouther, and the gibbering mouther has like, it's got some AoE fear thing. It has a multi-attack, and then it's got like one ranged ability that's on a recharge of a roll of 5 or 6, right? So whenever it uses, for those of you at home that may not know how this works, when it uses that ability, you've got to roll a 5 or 6 for it to come back, basically. Did I say that
putting it on cooldown. Yeah, you got it right.
It's on cooldown, and until that monster gets that specific roll, he can't use that ability again. So that was its only ranged ability was on this recharge. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be so hard. And then my brother just goes, I levitate it, and I'm like, oh, it did one spit. It tried for 5 turns to recharge the spit and couldn't.
Because it was floating.
And it literally just floated in the air. And my brother was like, I shoot ice lances at it. And the archer shoots it. And the melee guys just stood around and danced in a circle. And it just died and it literally could do nothing. And I was like, fuck you forever, bitch. Like, fuck you. And that's, anyway, long story short, our current group, I'm up to like 11. I'm no longer DMing because I'm fucking annoyed. And I'm making my friend Kevin do it. And I'm like, look, I'll host, but I'm like, I need a break. And I would go back to DMing already.
Sure.
But he seems to be having fun, so that's fine. But anyway, I'm playing a paladin. I like the paladin. I'm annoyed at people who complain about playing melee characters and don't like the downsides of melee. That's not where I'm going with this. Like if I'm a paladin and my problem is that I can't hit you because you're slowing me, well, I picked a fucking paladin. Like that's my problem.
That's your shtick, yeah.
Like I don't have good ranged attacks, or I'm a vengeance one, so I can misty step and do some shit to get around it. But ultimately, once I blow my load, I could potentially get kited. Like whatever, that's what you have to deal with. I'm not talking about that. I'm not trying to be like some overpowered shit. But I'm saying like even if I dump I get like some crazy crit with my multi attack, and I dump all of my divine whatever the fuck they are, divine smites, and they all crit, and you rule it for like the quote unquote broken raw, which I don't even think is broken because melee is underpowered and people are insane. Where if your melee attack crits, then your divine smite crits, which is how I'm ruling it. Even when I get that, it is not even fucking remotely close to as good as what the casters can do. I am able
just at will, right?
I am able to do, basically I can like fuck up one mob once per short rest really hard, right? I like swear my vengeance oath on it. I fucking get advantage. I dump my fucking load. And everyone's like, wow, that's impressive. And I'm like, yeah, cool, but that's the only thing I can do. And meanwhile, the casters are just like, yeah, I'm gonna fireball this dude. I'm gonna fucking counterspell this dude. I'm gonna polymorph 10 fucking guys and put up a fucking dirt wall that they can't get. Like, no, they're fucking overpowered. And in my opinion, roundabout, we're finally back to here.
Oh,
This is why I don't agree with D&D requiring or even it being a good idea to always completely adhere to quote unquote the book in all aspects. That's otherwise why are you DMing if you're not going to do cool shit?
Yeah, and you should always be doing cool shit.
And do your own thing. Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing that I really like about Powered by the Apocalypse engine games compared to Dungeons and Dragons, in D&D, there's a concept called armor class. And if you've got an armor class of 12, I, as the attacker, must roll a 12 or higher in order to hit you, right? Which is to say, if I roll an 11, I don't hit you. If I roll any number less than 11, except for a 1, then I don't hit you. And if I roll a 1, then something bad will probably happen to me.
Yep.
In Powered by the Apocalypse engine games, the numbers don't quite line up because they use regular 6-sided dice instead of a 20-sided die. But in general, you've got like your good success where the thing happens like you intended it to, your middling success where you had a complication, but things generally went your way, and then you've got a failure state. And I like that flexibility in there on the yes and sort of thought, the concept of improv. So like,
I agree with that because there's too harsh of a spectrum. Well, there's not a spectrum. There is no spectrum.
No, it's binary.
And that's sort of where it comes to what I was saying, where like a lot of times your character feels like a blithering fucking idiot. You spend all this time like putting points into acrobatics and you want to be a cool, flippy, nimble elf. And then you like go to do something and the DM is like, well, you rolled a 1, therefore you like turn upside down, all of your gear falls out of your pockets and your weapon is broken and you don't get to say, and you're just like, holy shit, why is that? So like, but I think that's more of a problem of how DMs rule it. They get excited and they're like, I get to fuck you up with this nat 1, when in reality it should just be like, you fucking miss. You fucking miss. Okay. Unless you were trying to do something ridiculous, you know? So, but I think maybe what you're getting at is that game engine tries to curb the human DM's natural tendencies by putting those rules in place to make that try to kind of sway them less towards being as harsh and polar.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of that, but they call it failing forwards. So in Dungeons and Dragons, setting aside fumbles for a second, you either hit or you don't hit, and it's a binary on-off expression of whether or not you hit them, right?
Yeah.
Setting aside crits and fumbles. In Powered by the Apocalypse Engine games, it's a yes and situation. So like, yes, you hit them and you got what you wanted, or yes, you hit them and something happened, or no, you didn't hit them and something happened. And it failing there, like when you fumble or when you don't get a hit in Dungeons and Dragons, that's pretty much the end of the statement. You rolled an 11, I'm sorry, you didn't hit.
Yes.
And then you move on to the next thought. In this, it's like
they try to curb that with multiple attacks in D&D, whereas you're saying the roll itself is more of a spectrum.
Yes. Hopefully it gives dungeon masters, or whatever the word is for the game, an opportunity to have something exciting happen, because that's the whole point of running a game. Any tabletop game is having something exciting happen.
Yeah,
you want there to be a yes and, so that there's something else for them to react to. Like not only am I fighting this ogre and I didn't hit him, but I'm fighting this ogre and like maybe I connected with his leg, but he grabbed me when that happened. And that's a more interesting a more interesting hypothetical, because it goes on from just the thing didn't happen like I wanted.
I agree with that. I think also, though, what that does, and I think you saw this with several members of the group when we ran Butts in the Dark. Butts in the Shadow, Butts in the Dark,
Blades in the Dark.
Blades in the Dark. When we ran it, you saw a couple people do this, I think, several times throughout the evening, which is that it was too vague for them to be able to go in a direction. It was so vague. You like, I remember you asking me, like, my character, you're supposed to pick a vice in that game, and you, whatever your vice is, it's like a thing that you do or a feeling you have. Like, so maybe your vice is you're a fucking drug addict, or maybe you're like a sex addict, or maybe my guy's vice was that he was basically a KKK member, and he needed to go to these Klan meetings. In order to satisfy his
vice. So like in the game, if you accumulate stress by pushing yourself or by stressing your character out, that's another way to kill your character.
That you regenerate. Yeah, sure.
And you regenerate it by
sure. But the point, like with the specific of how that worked, is like when I was looking at the potential vices, one of them was just the Circle of Flame parenthetical secret society. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. It's a secret society. And then I'm thinking there's like this whole built up backstory about it. And in reality, you're like, oh no, there's absolutely no information. You as the player have to make up that entire thing. And on the one hand, I agree with you. I do think that's kind of cool. And
it's freeing.
Yeah. Well, and I think in this specific example, this is a bad example to win the argument, so to speak, from my side right now, because I think in that instance, that is the exact kind of thing that it's neat and good and less bad that is open-ended, because you do just get to be like, well, the Circle of Flame is like
all of the Eruvians, or not the Eruvians, the Scovlanders got together and they're having rallies.
Yeah, that's what I made up. But you could have just as easily been like, well, all of the Scovlanders who are in the Circle of Flame are they're housekeepers, and they clean people's houses, but they burn them down to de-stress.
And that's kind of exciting because you got to play it off the cuff.
Yeah, and that's neat. But there were other things that it was way more restricted feeling about. Like, for instance, I had no idea at any point what my weapon did. I had a rifle, and you could pick a rifle with one box, or you could pick a rifle with two boxes. And we were all just like, presumably, if you pick the rifle with two boxes on the little sheet when you check the rifle, presumably it's a better rifle. And then it was like, I guess I have a better rifle, but I have no idea what kind of damage it does.
How it was better.
I don't know why it was better. I didn't know I picked some points into something called attunement, which is basically like magic proficiency. So I guess the D&D analog of that is, wisdom or charisma or intellect, whatever your spellcasting modifier would be for that class, maybe. That was how it seemed to be. And then it turns out that I didn't have any spells, I guess. So I was like, I thought I was going to have, because like when you pick like a ranger in Dungeons and Dragons, you can be like a pure ass archer that doesn't really have spells. Or, which would be, I guess, like a fighter with with one of the fighter subclasses. But you could also be an actual, is it called a hunter in 5e, or is it called a ranger? I think it's called a ranger. I think it's called a ranger with a subclass archer. Class. But then even when you're a subclass of archer, you get spells still.
Ranger spells,
Yeah, exactly. So then you're like, cool. So it's helpful to know what you can do. And so you
like having the guidelines in place, like the bumpers.
Yeah, and exactly. And my point is not that you always need, because I really disagree with. I have played with some DMs that are really straight and narrow about certain things. Things like, well, stealth and invisibility is always one that annoys me. I try to dissuade people away, to be honest with you, from even playing stealth or invisible type characters, which is mostly stealth, because invisibility is like, you just get it as a spell because casters are dumb. But if you pick a stealth character, I always try to sway like new players from doing that the first time, if it's their first time, because everybody assumes you're going to play Skyrim or you're going to play Hitman. And it's just like, no, man, like you can't be OP. And because you can't be OP, what ends up happening is you basically are worthless most of the time. Because the logistics of managing stealth as a dungeon master and as a player are frankly a mess. It's one of the worst things, in my opinion, about Dungeons and Dragons. It's like you roll for stealth. You're constantly having to re-roll based on the monsters. If you're not having to re-roll, some DMs are like, well, no, you just roll this and then they take it. It's like, okay, but then you're taking the roll and then they get rolls where they're just shit for an entire map. They get rolls where they're, invisible. Or people will roll, I've had it be where they roll the high stealth and then it's like, well, you got this high stealth roll, but that only means that they just can't see you if you're like 100 feet away. And so basically there's no middle ground where it works for everyone. It's always either the person playing the stealth character feels like, why did I pick this stealth character? Or the person playing the stealth character is doing things crazily and effectively, and everyone else is like, oh my God, they're just being OP. And so I honestly just don't think there's a good way to solve stealth until you have a really dedicated party that is dedicated to like respecting the game. And I think in order to respect the game, you need to like learn how to break it first, right? Like you need to learn like how to push the boundaries and how the dice rolls work. And that's not fun to do as a stealth character when you're highly over or highly underpowered. If you're new, I feel like, yeah, I
do feel like a lot of that is the way that Dungeons and Dragons handles combat simulation, because they do have a clusterfuck of rules about how to handle stealth and invisibility and all that stuff.
But if it's open-ended, that's crazy too. How do you handle it if it's totally open-ended?
So fun fact, I guess it's not really a fact. So I have a YouTube channel where I ran powered by the Apocalypse Engine game called City of Mist. And City of Mist is kind of like, did you ever watch Static Shock as a kid? Or as a young adult?
Is that the one? It's like
superheroes.
It's like the black dude with the dreads, and he's got electrical powers, and it was
That's him.
Yeah, I did not watch it, but it was like one of the ones that was on in the morning. Like, so I mean, I've seen episodes of it, but I didn't like religiously.
You're familiar with the concept. Like City of Mist is basically like a noir superhero generator. Without getting too deep into it, and all of the characters are like legendary heroes or legendary concepts or whatever. So one of the players in my group is Leprechaun. So they're channeling the essence of being a leprechaun. And the way that she interpreted that was that her character could turn invisible, right? Or make certain things invisible. And so there's a dice roll in there that I can't remember off the top of my head because it's been about a year and a half since I played. But there's a dice roll in there for her turning on her invisibility power. And when she did that, I would let her dice roll impact the way that the rest of the scene played out, insofar as it was like driving the plot or interesting. And so if she made like a really good roll, she was invisible. Or if she made like a partial success, then she would be mostly invisible, or maybe her pants were visible. Or if she failed, then she wouldn't know that she wasn't invisible until it was too late. Or like it would go out at just the wrong time. but only insofar as it drove the plot. And I feel like that's something that Powered by the Apocalypse Engine games give you a little bit more freedom in, because in Dungeons and Dragons, you can't say that a character is suddenly visible when they used to be invisible until it was like narratively exciting.
I think everything you just said, it doesn't have anything to do with D&D. I'm not going to lie. I think it has entirely to do with what you want to rule as the DM. I think you have just as much freedom in it. I mean, you can say, so like, how do you mean you can't say they're no longer invisible? You can easily just be like, hey, you're not invisible right now. Why can't you say that? You
can do that, but there's no hard rule read as written in the source material that says that. This is
what we're getting back to, because you're one of those guys that reads when you see all the rules, you don't want to break them. That's why I think you feel that way. Because you read the other ones and they're open.
Yeah.
You see that the rules.
Yes.
Right. You're following in. Okay. No. Yes.
No.
In both games, you're following the rules. Right.
Yeah.
It's just in one game, the rules are like, hey, the rules are open. And the other game, it says, here are the rules. But for me, I see those rules and I just think that's a good rule. That's a bad rule. It's like, when it's 12 a.m. and you sit at a red light for like,
but
for like a minute and you're like, this is stupid. I'm going to go. And if someone pulls you over,
I have never run a red light or a stop sign in my life.
There may be some other variables.
If it's 4 a.m. and I am dying of sleep deprivation and there's no police and it's in this tiny subdivision and there's a stop sign and I could just blitz it and I know I can see with my eyes.
Let me be clear. I do not ever blitz it because that's always bad. I am always, when I'm driving on the highway and no one's around me, I put my blinker on every single time.
Because you should.
That's a safety thing. So I'm not I'm not saying I don't fucking like blaze through. I don't mean that. But when you pull up to a stop sign, stop sign's irrelevant because I'm going to stop at a stop sign regardless, right?
Yes.
The stop sign's irrelevant. I'm going to stop and do that no matter what. But at a stop light and it's like 5 minutes and you're just sitting there and it's 12 a.m. and you've been sitting there for like a minute and a half. There's literally no one. I'm going.
Marshall and Laclede Station Road. There's a light right there that I always used to drive back. It's over there by Deer Creek Plaza. I would take that route back coming from my friend's house, and I would be done playing video games at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And I would stop at that light and think, I could run this. And then I would never do it. And I still have never. Over there at Marshall and Laclede Station Road, if you ever go there at 3 o'clock, it's me.
This is perfect. This is so perfect, though, because this is exactly what I started on when we went into this conversation. And this is, I think, I don't know. I think this is a problem that I have noticed with a lot of people where they are just, they're afraid to be like, no, we're going to do this. I don't see the problem with that as long as you're open about it, right?
Sure.
With your partner.
Sure, you should be. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's this is an excellent offshoot into polygamy if we want to go there, since we're talking about being open with your partner.
Of all of the words, I had not expected that one. No, not tell me about polygamy. No, I'm done with tabletop first.
Look, man, as long as everybody's on the same page, I'm good to go, right? Like, if everybody's on the same page,
everyone's consenting adults.
Yeah, you do you. It's 2020, but that's
it's 2020. We're in Utah. You're good.
No, but like, I mean, I do think it's the same concept though, right? Like as long as everybody knows what's going on and everybody's like, that sounds good.
Everyone agrees to it. Everyone consents.
Do it up. And so it's like, and so say what, okay, look, for this session or for this group of sessions or this entire adventure, we're going to rule blah things differently and we're going to see how it goes, right?
Sure.
Kind of like sometimes you try the other,
No, tell me. No, wait, when I try what?
I shouldn't have said polygamy. I should have said polyamory. Polyamory is much better and good than polygamy. Polygamy is much worse and less defensible.
Sorry, Utah. Sorry to all of our listeners in Utah.
Well, polyamory is really that is everyone being on the same page.
That's what you meant.
Polygamy is definitively not everyone on the same page. So I misspoke. But retroactively, hopefully the users understand what I meant. Anyway, I've got to go see my 40 wives in a couple minutes, so we got to close this up.
Yeah, we'll see if we can wrap this up.
Yeah, no. and I satisfy all of them, and it's totally not in my favor. All 40 of them. I'm just that good.
We're supposed to be talking about butts and sadness, not butts and like happiness and completion.
Well,
and fulfillment.
We've got we're about 40 minutes in at this point.
Okay,
so there's enough alcohol that the sadness has just gone out the window. So
oh yeah, I'm done with my coffee and whiskey here. So
we got to close this up. Goddamn.
Let me tell you the inverse of what you said at the end of our session last night. So we were playing Blades in the Dark and we finished and everyone wrapped up. I thought it was going to be a one shot. We might come back and play another. And if you don't know what a one shot means, that just means that we set out to play this one thing and then
we're going to be done in one session.
Yes. So at the end of everything,
didn't miss our chance to blow.
Right.
Yes.
The opportunity came once in this life. So I asked, does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns? And Will, the open person that he is, without any manner of filter, says, "I don't see why I wouldn't just fucking play D&D."
Yeah.
Because like and here's
how dare you assume I dropped an F-bomb in that statement? That's
no, you did.
That's
you
completely
did say,
uncharacteristic.
yeah. Excuse me. And I said because like there's a certain freedom of like a collaborative effort and like a freedom of restriction empowered by the Apocalypse Engine games compared to Dungeons and Dragons. So my response to that, my inverse of the statement is, if you're gonna just break all the rules and like take and pick and choose what you want, I don't see why you would play D&D when there are other systems. Like you would love Dungeon World.
Man,
Dungeon World is.
I don't know if I can agree with that though.
I know, and you don't have to
because it's like writing
fine.
to me. I think the rules are good because if you don't know where to go, the rules are an excellent way to if you don't know how to if you can't write good, then you need to learn some rules of writing. But then once you kind of know them, you're just fucking throwing that shit out the window.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want
if it makes sense. To me, I don't feel that way about D&D at all. The rules do not feel like a prison to me. They don't feel restrictive to you. No,
you don't feel like you owe the rules.
I don't owe them shit. The rules help me if I don't know what to do, how to do something, how something works. And then the more experience you gain, just like I think writing is an excellent example, if I might jack myself off here a little bit. It's the same way that when the more you know about it, the better you get at it. The more you can be like, all right, like I'm just gonna fucking do some other shit over here because I think that it works.
Sure.
And if it doesn't work, it's whatever. Then you scrap that. You scrap that and you revise it and you do something different in the next session.
You should do that because you're trying to build a fun experience, a compelling experience for you and your players, right?
And yes, and I will say that I did hear that feedback from most of the players who weren't my brother during our session about how they did have fun doing it and how they had felt restricted by other sessions.
Good, because that means that you're doing Dungeons and Dragons and compelling and that works for your group.
Yes.
You are being an effective dungeon master, and that's exactly what you should be doing. And the fact that you're using D&D isn't holding you back, and that's great. That's wonderful. You're doing it right.
Yeah, sure.
For me, I don't see why I would use specifically Dungeons and Dragons when I can accomplish the same goals with other systems.
Because you're being a selfish asshole.
If I just fell on my sword and let everybody else run.
Not run it, but no, but this is the Dunning-Kruger thing that we always get into about fighting games with you. It's the same thing because for you, it's like, well, I can do whatever I want anyway. Why wouldn't I just go play Marvel and do weird freeform corner mix-ups that kill my entire team?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is because nobody wants to play that shit, Alex. You're the only motherfucker that wants to play that shit. Nobody wants to follow you there. Shut the fuck up and play Street Fighter, you fucking weirdo. That's the answer. And you can see that from if you get a group of Marvel players together and you guys want to have a fucking Skullgirls night.
Yeah.
You want to Skullgirls, you want to do whatever. Be my fucking guest, but don't waltz into Gen Chat and be like, why the fuck doesn't anybody want to play
Skullgirls with me and cross my arms?
So yeah, like I think your girlfriend and to a lesser extent Jeff and Susie were all at points I could see where they were kind of confused about the system. And I don't want to speak for everybody too much because maybe some people did enjoy it more than it looks like they were enjoying it to me. But not that like I think everybody had like a good time. But I think that the confusion of it is it's a mental burden that kind of prevents people from wanting to jump into it. And I can definitely relate to that. It's why I do tutorials and stuff the way that I do, because I think that's the hardest thing about getting into something. And that doesn't mean you can't play it, but I think what you don't understand as a person is like, I think you pick up some of that stuff a lot easier than most people that I know. You're like innately good at, I think, system mechanical things, like how things work. Which is always interesting because we'll circle around to the whole discussion where I'm less good at all those things than people think that I am, and what I'm actually good at is explaining them. And the only reason that I can't explain them is because I'm such an idiot that I have to teach my idiot self how to understand them, which is why I can explain it to other people. You're not that. You're like a genius that can't communicate. So
I
like
prefer wizard. But...
Yeah, you're a wizard. Right. Yeah, exactly. So like you know how to like cast all the spells, and people are like, how do you do that? And you're like, I fucking snap my fingers and fire comes out, motherfucker. Yeah. Like exactly. So I think that is the element that you're missing. I don't think it means you can't play them or that you shouldn't play them. But I think we did that during the character creation. I spent intentionally knowing that it was a new kind. This is me being I told you so and an asshole, especially. But I knew based on you being you and based on it being a new tabletop, I was like, unless everybody has played this game before, everyone's going to be as confused or more confused than I am. And when I started looking at it an hour before our session on my own to see like how confusing I thought it was, and I DM'd you in Twitter like 100 times asking you questions, I was like, there is absolutely no way anybody's going to understand this. We're going to take an hour and a half to go through this character creation process.
Trying to understand it.
And that's not a fault of anything you did, right? Like,
no.
There's nothing.
Well, I could have done it better, but...
Well, sure, but that's not really the point. The point is not that... Because even if you had done it as good as you could have done it, it would have still been confusing. Because picking up a new engine, even though conceptually
much easier,
it's similar... it's different enough where it's like, oh, well, in D&D you roll 1d20, and that's your attack. And in this game, it's like you roll...
Skirmish or maybe hunt.
Per thing, but then you've got stress
and then
points,
I'm gonna make,
and you've got all these different... And so for you, you're like, well, Skullgirls is just like Street Fighter. You got this mechanic. It's
with
just like
bursts.
This mechanic, and there's a burst. And like, right. So yes. So stay with me. A normal human is like, what the fuck is a burst? And then their brain turns off. That's what a normal human does. Okay. Their brain turns off and they're like, I am incapable of accepting new information because I don't know what a burst is. Meanwhile, you're like 500 feet down the road, like, hey, weren't those bursts
Come on, guys.
Weren't those bursts cool? Follow me on this. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's like, and first time sessions are always a pain, but I think that's why you are the kind of person who picks up lots of different things that are similar, more so than a lot of people that I know. I think you find that very easy. And I think it's similar even with the tabletops. Yeah. Yes, you're a wizard. You're a wizard.
Yeah, I am a wizard, Harry. Okay, so let me make a case. In general, I think since we've got the COVIDs going on,
the
coronavirus, I think this is if you haven't understood from our passionate discussion, I think both of us would say that now is a good time to pick up tabletop RPGs because you can do it very easily with Roll20 or Discord.
This sales pitch, I guess. But
but like we should though, because like it's a lot of fun. And depending on who you ask, there's a lot of room for like collaborative storytelling, which is going to be great for your social aspect as well as your like creative aspect. And you're probably cooped up and growing your own containment beard.
The idea they're super social. The tabletop games.
They are.
The idea
by
the
nature.
Shitty like stereotype of like weird antisocial nerd playing D&D is like the most. If anything, that's like me because I do get drained from the social aspect of it, and like that's another thing I run into with my groups where they're like, "Let's play every fucking week," and I'm like, "No, I
have to sleep."
Yeah, leave me alone. No, like they're like, "Oh, you don't want to play?" I'm like, "No, I do, just not that fucking often."
Not today.
But for people who are super extroverted, quote unquote normal non-nerd humans. I actually think D&D is like fantastic for them. I'm always trying to get my non-nerd friends into it for that exact reason. It's extremely social. Like it drains the shit out of me as an introvert. It's extremely social.
So I think Will would make the case that Dungeons and Dragons is a great place to go. And honestly, like the starter kit, I think most of it is available for free online. And if you Google it, it is.
That's what I would say.
Yeah,
what evidence do you have that's
you literally told me yesterday. Why would I play any game that isn't fucking Dungeons and Dragons?
That's the joke.
Yeah. Okay. So Will would pitch that to you. There's a starter kit available online. You don't have to go outside. You don't have to go to your local comic book shop and
Dungeons and Dragons is Smash or Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what it is. It
it's
is.
Street Fighter 4 probably, but
Yeah.
we can address that in a second. There's a bunch of games if you're afraid of rules and you want a more social, collaborative, sitting around a campfire, having a good laugh experience, and you don't have any weird shaped dice. Any of the Powered by the Apocalypse engine games are a lot of fun. Will check out Dungeon World when you get the chance because it's more D&D than I'm making it out to be.
Okay.
Dungeon World. It's a Powered by the Apocalypse engine game that still has AC and hit points. There's Monster of the Week, which is like a Buffy the Vampire Simulator, which I really regret not having forced you at gunpoint to play.
I would definitely check that out. That sounds very intriguing.
I've run that before. I'm very comfortable with the system. I'll make you do it. We'll have a great time. Maybe we'll stream. All
right.
City of Mist is a lot of fun. That's beside the point. So there's a bunch of games that are Powered by the Apocalypse games. You can look over. They've got like starter kits online that you're just able to pick up and play. There's also the Trail of Cthulhu that you mentioned earlier,
yes.
Which has a totally different feel. And I'm just about to start.
It felt more like horror mystery to me than
it is those things. Yeah. And like from a dungeon master perspective, and I would be interested.
Like you didn't want to fight if you could help it most of the time.
Because Lovecraftian monsters will just kill you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you just get the fuck out if you can.
Yeah, leave, please, or you'll lose your life or your sanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would be interested to see you run one of those type sessions, a Trail of Cthulhu specifically, because it's a lot more forgiving than Call of Cthulhu.
That's tough because I think I do enjoy combat, to be honest. But I get the appeal of less combat-oriented ones at the same time. I do understand that need. You
can do what's called a pulp Trail of Cthulhu run and still get everything that you're looking for. It still has the combat to it. We can talk about that later. But that, for me, is more compelling than Dungeons and Dragons, or differently compelling, because as a dungeon master, you have to write out like what clues are at the crime scene where the horrific shit happens. And that's like a lot of fun. And I feel like where I get most of my role playing in. And at the end of the day, that's when I'm having my most fun, is when I get to do a bunch of character voices and act like a bunch of different people. Yeah,
I was not ready for your Jersey deli employee accent.
Yeah. I've got a handful of them.
All right.
Accents. Yeah. So we'll come back and play.
All my voices are just like
game.
Bad Scottish accents or very high pitched girly voices.
I don't do the high. Well, I don't do
Everybody knows about those.
Everybody knows about Up and Down. But yeah, like it's a great time. Do pick up the biggest barrier to entry on a tabletop RPG, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you'll agree, is finding someone willing to dungeon master. And it's a really rewarding experience, especially if you're making everybody else.
It is. I'm going to play devil's advocate, though, and say that it is also an extremely draining experience, because you do end up being the scheduler, the one that's prodding to trying, and scheduling is a motherfucker.
Team leader,
I think most of the hard part of being a dungeon master is not actually being a dungeon master. It actually deciding what monsters go where, running a campaign. I think for me, I always had an easier time building campaigns than following existingly written ones. That's something, as a person, you can decide for yourself.
You find out on
some
your
people
own.
Find one or the other easier. I find it much easier to write my own story and make my own dungeon than I do to follow an existing one. It just helps me remember it. It's kind of how my brain works. That goes back to how I'm an idiot, and that's why I'm good at teaching people things. I have no attention span and can't learn from others. But if I do something on my own, it helps me remember. But anyway, that part's easy. The annoying part, is like dealing with the weird qualms that come up about people's freaking infighting about how their characters work, or when people are available or aren't available, getting people to agree to doing a specific thing. Like that stuff is far harder than, and so that's not to say to scare you away from doing it, but it's more to say, I think the thing people
it's
are
something
scared
to consider.
it's something to consider, I think, but it's also, I do also think it helps with, I think people are scared of the opposite. They're scared of the thing that's actually easy. They're scared of like knowing the rules. You just look shit up.
That's comparatively
unless you're playing
easy.
with a bunch of dicks, And I kind of shit on my brother this entire podcast about it. He's not a fucking asshole. It's not like he was just coming out of the woodwork every 5 seconds. Most of the time, if you're playing with people, they're going to be supportive. They just might agree or disagree with particular decisions that you're making. And that's a function of
it being social.
Yes, but you will be the one that decides that. I think that is a key difference, being a dungeon master versus I guess it's kind of similar to being a host of a party. But it's like, you're having a bunch of your friends over and you've got that one fucking bitchy friend who's like, I don't like orange soda. And you're like, look, motherfucker, everybody wants orange soda. Everybody enjoys
it's what I bought.
Everybody enjoys drinking orange soda. It's what we have. And they're like, man, so like, I guess what I'm getting at is like, you do have to deal with that aspect of it. But the creative aspect of it, I think, is a lot less intimidating than people make it out to be. I agree with your assessment. And it is rewarding, especially when it goes well.
Yeah, well, and like you mentioned a handful of things. One of them was like corralling all of the people.
Yep.
And one of the other things that you had mentioned was physically scheduling, which under normal circumstances would be really hard, except that it's coronavirus outside.
Sure.
So it's very easy to get everybody scheduled this couple of weeks.
Yeah. Play tabletops, kids.
No, seriously. It's a lot of fun. I'm gonna run just like everything until I go blind, because I don't suffer the same debilitating weakness after running a session that I think you do.
No, this is why we've talked about this. This is why you are an extrovert and I am an introvert. I am drained by other humans. Other humans vampirically suck my life force out of me, and I lament them but
it's fortunate because you just have so much life force for the rest of us to suck at.
Oh man, I know, but then I get all angry at everyone. Did you see? I tweeted something earlier where I was complaining about. I compared extroverts during the isolation to the zombies from World War Z just crawling into my DMs. Like I was expecting to have all this fun isolated, and then A2 gave me shit, as A2 is wont to do.
Good old A2.
Yeah, and he was like, boo-hoo, everyone loves me even though I'm an asshole. And I was like, yeah, it's exhausting.
It's irritating. Despite your best efforts, everybody likes you.
Despite my best efforts. So, we're coming up on an hour, though. I think we're pretty end capped, though, unless you've got any other things you want to finish up on for this episode.
Do you want to talk about butts?
The butts are always on the horizon.
Please give an update. Yeah, no. So last podcast, you told us about right as the coronavirus was striking. You messaged a girl and then she did not yet message you back. Please update us, because I was there for the stream, but I know that not all of our viewers were, and also I want an update.
Well,
have you gotten a response?
You're going to be disappointed because I'm Tindering while not being a woman. So I have no good news for you. She likes my message. Okay, here's the deal. I messaged this chick. She's got an amazing profile. I'm like super interested. And I message her. She doesn't say shit to me for, I don't even know. It was like a week or some shit.
It was seriously a week. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was like a week or a week and a half.
2 days ago.
And then we were all playing Grand Blue in Discord the other day, and I'm like, shit, I got a Tinder notification. I'm like, shit, it's the girl who is cute and has a great profile, and I'm super interested in, even though I've never spoken to her before, because that's very healthy, and don't criticize me about it. So anyway, I'm like, cool. What's the notification? And it's just that she just clicked like. She just clicked like on my message.
She took like 9 days to click like on a message.
Just to read my message and be like, like.
Yes.
Nice.
I enjoyed this.
And so then I'm like, we're playing Grand Blue, and I'm like, what the fuck, guys? I'm like, all right, I can't play hard to get with this chick because she has way too cool of a profile. I'm way too interested.
Clearly everyone's on her.
I'm way too interested in this chick. I'm sure everyone else is too. So I can't do that. So I just have to message her, even though, like, I'm pretty sure she's not going to send me a message. I was waiting after she hit like. I was waiting for her to, like, send a fucking message. Anything.
Yes.
TTS.
Let's meet up.
Or anything.
LOL.
Anything at all. And it was like fucking an hour went by. We're playing Grand Blue. I'm like, this chick is not messaging me. She's not going to message me. She straight up opened her phone, saw my message, clicked like, and then went about her fucking day. So I'm like, fuck.
In COVID.
Fuck, I got to send this chick a message. So then I sent her a message, and she still hasn't fucking said shit to me.
Damn.
Maybe in 5 days she'll click like without saying anything.
You got like 8 more days, man.
I'm done. Am I done? It's unfortunate. Like, it's not even like, it's not like she's just like attractive, like, right? She's got a lot of boxes checked on this profile. She has an amazingly crafted profile. She broke all the right rules. She followed the rules. You know, it's well written.
She's search engine optimized.
It's well written, and I'm just like, fuck. But yeah, I'm fucked. So anyway, I'm simping over a chick I've never met in my entire life. She's stringing me along by clicking like once a week to messages that I send her, and I am a pathetic waste of existence. I'm going to die alone, infected with corona, and my cat will eat me, and no one will know that I've gone because I will have no contact. So that's the update. That's the update.
I'm so glad I asked. Thank you.
Hey, we made it to the sadness part of Butts and Sadness.
We did, yeah. Butts and Sadness,
All right.
as the doctor prescribed.
What a wonderful note to end on. Don't kill yourselves out there in Coronavirus.
Play tabletop RPGs.
Play tabletop RPGs instead. I've been Metal Music Man.
And I've been Professor Lex.
And we will catch you guys next time. Peace.